Hi there, friends. That's Bill Houston of the Bill Houston Podcast. Today we have the Village of Endicott debate with the Democratic Party mayoral candidates. This was recorded on Thursday, June 13th, 2019. The Democratic Party primary is on Tuesday, June 25. So if you are a Democrat in the Village of Endicott, and you want to choose the candidate, the Democratic Party candidate for mayor in the Village of Endicott, then you need to get out to your polling station on June 25th. That's coming up really soon. It's on a Tuesday. I work in the public interest, friends. I do public service work full time. I don't get paid a salary. I work on donations and grants, so donations in any amount would be greatly appreciated. You can donate online by using this link, tinyurl.com/donate to Bill Houston, and there's going to be a link in the program description. You can also send me checks by mail to William Houston, P.O. Box 22, Endicott, New York, 13761. And I am giving away my guitar. It's in very good condition. It's been rarely used since I've owned it. It's a Galveston brand, an electroacoustic. It's a very nice guitar. It plays nice. This is a great beginner's package here, including picks, a gig bag, and chord books. So if you know a recent grad, or we've got Father's Day coming up, if you know somebody that's always wanted to play guitar, now's your chance to pick up this guitar. First donation over $150 gets this whole package. It's probably valued around, with the books and the bag and everything, probably valued about $200. This is a used guitar, but it's about what you would pay if you bought it in a store, and you will be supporting local environmental work and my work to help emphasize local issues. So donations are appreciated in any amount. If you want the guitar and you want to make sure it's still available, please email me, williamahouston@gmail.com. Please try emailing me first. If you don't have access to email, please feel free to call me, 607-296-0671. That's 607-296-0671. Thanks a lot. Be sure to like the video and click subscribe on my channel. That's very important. That helps me out a lot. And if you ring the bell, you'll be alerted every time I publish a new video. Okay, here's the debate coming right up.
Hello, can we have your attention, please? We're about to start tonight's debate. My name is Heather Strahley. I'm Town of Union Council member, and I'm president of the Democratic Women of Broome County. And we just want to thank you tonight for taking the time to come and meet our candidates, Larry Coppola and Frank Palmisano. Unfortunately, Trustee Chapman is at another function this evening and looks like she will not be joining us. Before we get started, Makira here would like to lead us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. So if we could please stand for the pledge.
Hats off, please. Place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you. Great job. I'd like to introduce our moderator tonight, Lisa Strahley. She is a professor from the SUNY Broome Civic Engagement Center, and she has a lot of experience with debate and moderation, so we're lucky to have her tonight. So I will turn everything over to Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So I just realized we just need to add an R into your name, and we would both be Strahley, right? Well, thank you for coming tonight. I'm honored to be able to help moderate the debate here. I have just a couple of ground rules. One is for the participants in the audience. So I ask that you listen with an open mind to the responses of the candidates, and that you refrain from showing either positive or negative responses. At the end of the debate, you may clap if you wish to. For the candidates, we're going to run the debate tonight with a series of questions. We'll have an opening statement that will give you 3 minutes to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about maybe why you're running for office. And then a series of questions. I will alternate who the question goes to first throughout the night so that you each have an opportunity to answer in that order. For each question, you will be given 3 minutes, and we're going to ask that we stick to that time. So Heather has a sign she'll hold up when half of your time has been utilized, and then again when you have 15 seconds. So at the 15-second mark, please start closing up so that we can conclude and move on. Is that okay? All right, thank you. We have some pre-written questions, and then we have some questions from the audience. So we're going to start with the questions after you introduce yourselves, and then we'll go into those that folks from the audience have asked. Oh, and we have another one coming in. Thank you. Are we ready to begin? All right. Would you like to start?
Okay.
Thank you.
Please use the microphone, please. Get the microphone. Please use the microphone. Please use the microphone for the audio. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Larry Coppola. First, let me talk about my opponent, Cheryl Chapman. Due to whatever reason, she is not here. Do not base your vote on her absence, but rather her record. We have worked together and continue to work together for Endicott. We as trustees unanimously hired the police chiefs and the assistant chief who have reinvigorated and continue to improve our police force. Security and safety is our primary duty, and as a result, I stand by our police and fire departments. They must be robust and functional, and we must explore all avenues to keep them that way. I have a vision, a dream, faith in Endicott's future, and I dedicate my campaign to them and to my late father, who was a North Side boy. My dad, Vince, would occasionally tell me, Larry, wash your face, put on some nice clothes, and for God's sakes, please behave. We have company coming. And to Endicott, I would say, we have company coming. I would like Endicott to reclaim its pride in its village and its neighborhoods through small initiatives. We have company coming. Some of the small initiatives I am advocating is a Porches and Paint program for curb appeal, nonprofits and neighborhoods to upgrade neighborhoods. The third program I'm advocating is Help or Hit the Road. This is aimed at absentee landlords. And a fourth program I'm advocating is Lease It and Freeze It, which is to help rent retail spaces. I can give you further information on any of those. Vince's visions are also big, as in build it and they will come, as outlined in our DRI application, which now is in the finals in the state. An arts community, a renaissance, a revival on the Ave, in Little Italy, through the Union Districts. This is what we must bring on. Endicott's rich and great history spans over 100 years, from before the Roaring 20s to the soon-to-be Soaring 20s. People seem to want to say dreams can't come true. I do not believe in can'ts. I believe in cans. We can do this, and we will do this. Thank you.
First off, I'd like to thank the Broome County Democratic Women, headed by Councilwoman Heather Strahley, for having this event. Secondly, I'd like to thank all of you for showing interest in what's a very important election in the village of Endicott. Also at this time, I'd like to thank Larry for showing up tonight. He had the same excuse, Association of Towns and Counties dinner in Binghamton that Cheryl Chapman had. Larry chose to come he made the right decision. Cheryl chose not to. If we're really going to move ahead, if we're really going to have leadership, we need people who show up all of the time. There's no excuse not to show up before a group so instrumental in this election as the Broome County Democratic Women. What would happen if this were not a hostile group or a group she knew nothing of? Would she show up for that? I don't think so, not based on what we see tonight. And for Larry to make excuses for her is commendable on his part, but no excuse for her. We need to be here for the people, just as you're here tonight for us and for our community. This is an important moment in Endicott. There are critical challenges we must face and deal with. I'm running not because it will be easy. I'm running as a third-generation Endicotter who appreciates our past, but by experience and education is prepared to deal with our future. We understand that we cannot lead looking through the rearview mirror, but we can move forward by understanding who we are and where we need to go. This year we are on the cusp of the 100th anniversary of the Workers' Arch. Proclaiming the construction of the Workers' Arch is a monumental achievement by our forefathers. Proudly, the arch proclaims the home of the square deal. As your mayor, I will be guided by that principle alone. We deserve a mayor who is committed to the interests of the taxpayers above any other interests or considerations. I will be that kind of mayor for you if you give me the chance starting on June 24th, 5th, and then hopefully onto the road in November. But it's important that we deal with all the issues. I have a 12-point program that will be coming out that deals with all the issues created by this board, that must be confronted by this board, and that will lead us into the future. For example, we need to be a clean energy community. There's grant money there for that kind of situation. We need to be a community that deals directly from the taxpayer's perspective on every pilot that's proposed. Recently, we've had 3 pilots. The first one was the Skyline Drive project, where for 23 years, they were given tax breaks.
Thank you. You actually may be able to continue with our first question. The first question is, what are the most important challenges facing the village, and how will you address them?
The most important...
In 3 minutes, right?
The biggest problem is we face a continuing loss of assessments. It started in the early 90s with the first of 3 of the state's largest reassessments against the village or town in New York State's history. The second challenge is that we must face our budget problems on an everyday basis. We can't rely solely on one individual who works in the department and does a good job, and was appointed village manager. We'll discuss that position more later. But most importantly, we face budget crises every day that we need to confront in order to stay underneath the 2% cap. Everybody wants more of everything, but more importantly, we need to approach the budget and every decision we face from the taxpayer's standpoint, as advocates for the taxpayers, not being misled by any department head who wants more all the time, or by our own desire to create quote, development. We need to assess where our pilots go. Recently, there was a request from the Marchuka brothers to create a pilot, to get a pilot program through. The pilot essentially taxed just the raw land. I think all of you here would like that deal for your own houses. Just pay tax on the raw land and forget whatever improvement you put on it. So we'd basically be paying no taxes. The situation was defined by the Industrial Development Agency, also known as the agency, as a poster boy for bad pilots. That's how awful that proposal was. Yet Larry, the mayor, and Eileen Konechny, who's here tonight, thanks for being here, Eileen, all 3 of them voted to support that particular pilot. We'll discuss more on that issue later. But I think my time is running out.
Thank you.
I want to go move.
Thanks. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, repeat the question.
What are the most important challenges facing our village, and how will you address them?
There are more than one challenges facing the village. Taxes, of course, are always an issue. They're an issue everywhere. But this village faces much deeper problems. We have a problem with drugs. We have a problem with security. We have a problem with jobs. This is a wonderful village. Every village has problems. We must work aggressively to face each and every problem that's in the village. If I may take one moment to correct an assertion by Frank in regards to the pilot. The pilot was not based on bare land. The pilot was based on two buildings on the property. The pilot was then sent to the IDA, as it should be. There is a certain process in pilots. Pilots are voted on by the village. They go to the IDA. They are reviewed. They can send them back with recommendations, which in fact they are getting ready to do again. That is what's called due process, and it is being followed. What will come out of it, I cannot honestly say at this point, but I feel as though development on Washington Ave, on Little Italy, in the Union District must be aggressively approached. I feel as though the police department must be aggressively supported. And the biggest problem we have is the perception of Endicott itself. Endicott has chosen not to sell itself. It has chosen not to be proud of itself. It has chosen not to make people aware that this is a great place to live. We need to spread that message. We need to strengthen our tax base, which will be strengthened as you bring more people into the area. Thank you.
Thank you. We can't come back, sorry. Thank you. This question will take you back. So during your time in office, what would you say were your greatest achievements? And if you were to become mayor, what would you look forward to continuing to accomplish?
I would have to say the vote I'm most proud of was the vote for the police chief. The dramatic difference he has made in Endicott is noticeable. The police department is still learning, it is still developing, and it still is growing with problems. But he has led it from, I would call it a sleeping state, to a more active state. He has been very active in the community, and he has responded to people from the community. And I'm very proud to have him in our village. I'm also very proud of something Frank is very mad about. I'm proud that I made, through our efforts, Anthony Bates a village manager, which was cleared through New York State, which was cleared through the civil service, which was cleared through legal challenges. He is now doing the job that a village manager should do. Prior to that, he was extremely out of his job description, and the village was in danger of lawsuits, of wrongful actions, because he was forced to make decisions that was not in his job description. And I'm proud that I've made him village manager. I'm also proud of the mistakes I've made. I have learned over the 4 years that I've been actively involved that sometimes what appears to be the best idea isn't. I feel as though I'm willing to learn from every mistake I've made, and as far as I'm concerned, if you don't make mistakes, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to take the safe, boring route to non-existence. Thank you.
Bless you. Would you like the question repeated? Okay. Your greatest accomplishments in office?
Well, first off, I'm going to address my accomplishments in office because I'm proud of those achievements and the people I worked with. First off, I was on the committee that built the Veterans Memorial Monument. I was honored to put the resolution through that named Veterans Memorial Park. And we sit here tonight in the American Legion. We should be thankful for those who paid the ultimate price for our freedom. The second thing that I'm proud of is I advocated for the demolition of the Legends Bar. It was on the north side on Oak Hill Avenue. It accomplished two very important things that I think is a model for how we could use, build neighborhood economies. First off, there was a lack of parking in the park that accomplishes that goal of providing parking. The second thing is it stimulated economic development across the street. Joey's Pizza, the coffee shop. It cleaned up that portion of the neighborhood on both sides of the park. Third thing is it got rid of a bad bar. It got rid of a bar that was creating havoc, that was known for fights, that put fear in the hearts of the neighbors and customers at Oaks Inn. It just established that. And another point that I was proud of is we built the ball field on the Parks Committee that I was on at the Little League Park. Further, I wrote the resolutions protecting downtown merchants, something we need to consider all the time, and something we're not doing when we support development at Mayoral Park that doesn't specifically protect the taxpayers who are our second largest taxpaying group in the village. I also sponsored and directed the concerts in the park for 10 years in the village. They were the best attended municipal concert series in upstate New York and serve as a model of how important it is to bring people together and develop community. I also want to address during the time that's left, Larry used the term mad to describe how I felt about the appointment of the village manager. That is incorrect. I wasn't mad. I was disappointed. Disappointed that the village had changed the description of the village government from mayor board form of government that they were elected to serve on to village manager at a salary of $87,000 a year. He's an outstanding individual, Anthony Bates is, but no matter how you think about one individual, you owe it to the taxpayers when you change the form of government to put it up for referendum. We spoke at that during the September 2017 village board meeting. I spoke for it, John Visser spoke for it, and Alberta Gasta also addressed the issue requiring asking for a public referendum.
So this next question may be a repeat. Maybe you can say if you still want to say more about it. If either of you do, we'll open this question up. But the question we had written was, a few years ago, the village chose to hire a village manager. What are your feelings on this hire, and do you feel that the village manager has been an asset to Endicott, and in what ways? Do either of you wish to continue to speak on that?
Sure.
Okay, so can we say, this would start with you then? Thank you.
First off, Anthony Bates is a trustworthy individual. He does a good job. He's helped keep the village under the 2% cap on his own. He didn't get much help from the village board itself. That'll be an issue we'll address later. But no matter how you feel about Anthony Bates, the question is, the way to cure what ails democracy, in my view, was stated once by a great governor, Al Smith. He said, the way to cure what ails democracy is by more democracy. There would have been nothing wrong with presenting his position, his responsibilities, and his salary to the voters in the village of Endicott. These are difficult financial times. The more we involve the community, the better off we are. I think if you involve the community in the issue, for example, of the Marchuka property, the one Larry supports, no matter what it costs, no matter what impact it has on the largest tax-paying district in the village. That's the area between North Street and Washington Avenue. Everyone is for development. I'm for development. I hope the Marchuk is to get a development, but I also hope that it's a fair deal for the taxpayers in the village. The proposal was not fair. The city manager proposition should have been before the ballot, before the voters on the ballot in a referendum. There was no choice for the voters in the position, and they were not educated on what the village board was doing, what functions they were giving up in order to create the position. That was wrong.
What's that? No. The village manager, he's mentioned his salary 3 times, 4 times. His salary was that amount before he was the village manager. The salary is irrelevant in this conversation. At the time that we created the village manager, Anthony Bates, probably the most critical member of our village, was on a year-by-year contract. The mayor appointed him. The mayor could take his job at any moment. The village manager, that's true. The village manager position was created to protect the job and to put what he did within his job description. And as I mentioned before, it went through the scrutiny of the state of the civil service. So it was in fact legal, and it did not change the duties and obligations of either the mayor nor the trustees. It just codified the duties he was already doing.
Thank you. We're not having rebuttals. When you have time to speak, if you wish to use your time on that, you can. So this is another possibly, it's a similar question about things you've already raised. So this says, please explain your feelings regarding the Machuska pilot and the decision by the IDA to reject the pilot based on the current village board.
As I mentioned before, that any pilot is a multifaceted event. It goes before the village. I personally have a real problem with the fact that the village and every other village is burdened with making these decisions when in fact the largest taxpayer, the school district, has no decision to make. When a pilot is put before the village is making a decision for the school district, the town, the village, the county, all of them. And then the IDA, their job is to review, amend, suggest, or reject. A village's power to negotiate is extremely limited. They can take the negotiations just so far. The IDA's power to negotiate is much greater. So in a perfect world, what happens with a pilot is exactly what did happen. It was passed, the IDA reviewed it or chose not to review it, and sending it back with suggestions and revisions. The facts of the matter is that we are desperate for some development. And that development is entirely self-funded by the Marchuska brothers. They bought the land. That land was for sale in 1966. So if we're having a problem with development, where were the developers for the last 50 years? We have not had any new buildings on Washington Ave. I don't actually know how long. The newest building around is Schaefer Bus. We need to do something to jumpstart the economy. And if that requires being a little too generous, then yes, I'm in favor of being a little too generous. And let me remind you that that bare property was collecting $13,000 a year. Now, we can leave it as a bare property and continue to collect $13,000 a year for the next 50 years, just like the last 50 years. Or we can choose to develop it and enhance the value of it and everything around it.
You want the question repeated?
Yeah, please.
Please explain your feelings regarding the Juska pilot and the decision by the IDA to reject the pilots passed by the current village board.
Okay, first off, let me correct some of the record here. The proposal for this village city manager did change the structure of the village government. The first proposal was for 5 years. 5, that would encumbering 5 separate elected village boards with the same manager. It would have encompassed 2, maybe almost 3 village mayors without a public referendum. I suggested then that that was the fact, that it was binding future boards for a lengthy period of time. Giving job security to the village manager, to an individual, is one thing. Obviously, he has ability. He could have confidence of all of them, but job security in a political appointment is not something that should be designed to carry through administration after administration. You should have to earn your salt with each administration. The other thing is the salary, he says, wasn't altered. Yes, it was. He left the village after and got appointed to a county position, came back, got $78,000 to start. Eventually, the village manager proposal, right now, he's making $90,000 a year. That's more than the county executive. The police chief makes $125,000 a year. He has an assistant. The fire chief makes over $130,000 a year. So, to get back on the Marchuka project, which is also extremely important, one of my opponents, Larry, 3 times. First, they had a proposal that had no tax benefit to the village for whatever improvements were placed on the property. Second, it had no consideration to the business people and the taxes that they paid. But in terms of Larry's behavior on the issue, he supported it to the hill in a 3-2 vote. It was nixed by the Industrial Development Agency. The taxpayers owe them a debt of gratitude for turning it down, calling it the worst, a poster boy for the worst pilot they ever seen. Then they came back, and Marchuka, just within a few days after being rejected by the IDA, they went to the code office and they were issued a permit to build an electronic billboard. Billboards are specifically codified in the village code. They're prevented in the village from expanding any further. They are outlawed in the village in terms of expansion and new construction. And they somehow, miraculously, they were given a permit to build this electronic sign. It was only because Diane Hunter and I, and a couple members of the board, went to code. We went to codes. We initiated, Diane and I, initiated stopping the issuance of that permit. They said, the code office said that it went through the code, that it went through the zoning board. That wasn't true. The third thing that Larry did this last week is that he said,
Sorry, if we don't keep on time, then we'll keep running over. I'm sorry. This takes us in a different direction, though, this question. Like everywhere in Broome County, the village has been hit with opioid epidemic. In addition, several arrests have occurred in the last few months involving crystal meth. What methods do you support to help eradicate drugs in the village? And that one starts with you.
well, Firstly, it's a two-pronged approach. First off is education, second off is enforcement. In terms of education, the former developmental center, the Broome Developmental Center, that is now the drug clinic, is a step in the right direction in terms of rehabbing those who are afflicted. In terms of enforcement, we need to be strictly enforce the dealers. Drug dealers need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, but we can't arrest our way through the problem. It's going to take education and a community. It takes a village to stop this kind of activity. So now, I'll go back to the third. I cited three things that Larry's done to show how much he's in the back pocket of the Marchukas. First, he voted 3-2, was the lead voice along with the mayor to pull Marchuka's boondoggle through, the boondoggle in terms of tax benefits. The second one was the sign that was allowed to be permitted illegally and is now stopped and has left the village open to possible litigation from the other outdoor signs that haven't been permitted to expand. And the third thing, this past board meeting, he wants to change the zoning without the specific proposal. He used the word due process earlier, and he totally ignored due process, took it into his own hands to tell the board that he wanted to change the zoning from neighborhood commercial to light industrial without fully understanding what the pilot program, the next pilot proposal was or whether it would be accepted. That should be after the fact, and it should go through due process, through the code department, through the zoning department, through planning, and then to construction. But I'd like to ask Larry tonight, Larry, you are so adamant for the Marchuka proposal. Are you going to take any money from any developers in the village in your campaign?
Yes, I've received money from developers.
Have you received money from the Marchukas?
Not directly, no.
Not directly. Not directly. We have campaign finance laws that specifically request all campaign contributions to be listed. How much have you gotten indirectly from the Marchukas?
I honestly don't know.
You don't know how much indirect money he's gotten from the Marchukas. This is a person who wants your trust in an election to be mayor to deal with future developers. How much indirect money is he going to get from other developers? I will not take a single penny from a developer now or in the future. All I want is the support of the taxpayers. That's the people I want to represent. I've taken indirect money. Can you believe that? You know, I worked with Marty Dartis on the Monument Committee. Marty was on the Nixon tapes. You know what the famous line was? Follow the money. I'll end the conversation. I'll end my minute right there.
Thank you. So if we're asking questions back and forth, I think we have to keep in mind, though, that our candidate did not fully utilize the time to answer the question, although you did give your response to that. But I think we want to give full responses as much as we can to the questions that are being asked. Do you want the question repeated?
Sure.
Like everywhere else in Broome County, the village has been hit with the opioid epidemic. In addition, several arrests have occurred in the last few months involving crystal meth. What methods do you support to help eradicate drugs in the village? Thank you.
Well, this may be one and only time that Frank I somewhat agree on anything. The opioid epidemic is huge. It's not a problem that can be solved by a village. It's not a problem that can be solved without multiple hands involved. One of the most important things, as he mentioned, is education. Also, we must treat the addicted. It is not a matter of choice once you become addictive. It is a matter of life. You must break that chain. It is not easy. We must provide treatment. We must have a strong police force. to handle this. And in order to do that, you need policemen. We must also seek help from the state troopers, Broome County sheriffs, anywhere we can get anywhere we can get help. I would like to respond to Frank's. For one, the only thing I'm going to say about this is that everybody keeps referring to the Marchuska brothers as if they are a corporation. They are not. There are two separate individuals. One is called Justin and one is called Barney. If I'm not even sure. They are at liberty to donate to whomsoever they want. My records will be open, are open. I don't know because I don't get myself involved. I don't honestly know who gave me money at my own fundraiser. It wasn't my job to keep track of it. That's what a treasurer does, and that treasurer will report that to the state. And if you want somebody to trust, anybody who has been to a meeting with me or anything, they know that I do not lie. And I get too excited about things sometimes and I make mistakes, but I never present false witness as he has just presented against me.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is shifting gears again. On 3/19, a public meeting took place regarding the IBM plume. Although a great deal of toxic dumps have been dealt with, some residents are still worried about toxic spill remnants. What can you say or do to reassure our residents?
This one is very tough, particularly with IBM. I am aware that in the past few years, particularly this year, areas that were formerly cleared by the DEC are now facing some contamination again. And this is due to the thing that doesn't exist. Global warming doesn't exist, but somehow we are getting so much rain that the water table in this area has risen so high that the toxic metals and chemicals that were far beneath the surface are rising again. They still have mitigation efforts going on, and unfortunately, they will have to continue going on. There was some great hope that the IBM plume was a thing of the past, but because of the present water levels, it is not. I will address two other areas, Kmart Plaza. We need to be able to get on the property. At this point in time, we have no legal recourse to get on the property and have it tested. We have requested the DEC to come in and test so that we know what exactly is there. We would love to develop that property. We have multiple offers to develop that property. We have offers from the state to develop that property. And unfortunately, we can't develop it until we know what's there. And we have an urgent request into the DEC to do their job. And they, as of yet, haven't done it. They are working on the brownfield next to here on campus. And we're hoping to tie the two of them together so that they respond to them and Endicott can move forward.
Would you like the question repeated? This is where I need my glasses. 3/19, thanks. A public meeting took place regarding the IBM plume. Although a great deal of toxic dumps have been dealt with, some residents are still worried about the toxic spill remnants. What can you say or do to reassure our residents?
First off, we need to establish, we owe the late Congressman Maurice Hinchey a great debt of gratitude. It was his commitment to clean environment that helped push IBM and the EPA and DEC to work as vigorously as they have at cleaning up the pollution. The second area is that we need, as I was telling one gentleman earlier tonight, the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts of 1972 were the most significant environmental legislation passed by by Congress. Since the current administration, the national administration, the Trump administration has taken power, they've weakened the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts wherever they can. It's at the peril of all of our projects and all of our future that we maintain a clean environment. I'm afraid that we've lost ground in that area, and I'm afraid that it affects all of us right down to the local level. In terms of IBM, it's regrettable that we didn't sue IBM in a class action lawsuit when the plume occurred and when the federal government discovered that it was well below the standard for quality. We missed an opportunity, and our taxpayers have paid the price because our property values have been lower, our health is at risk, and the perception of safety is constantly over our heads like a dark cloud. So it's unfortunate that we didn't sue IBM vigorously to begin with. They settled, the village settled when Mayor Pulse was in. The village settled for $5,000 on each little parcel of land, little corners that they own plots, and also a strip around the South Street well. But we were owed a lot more than that. Our taxpayers were owed a lot more than that.
There has been concern by some residents over the quality of water. Could you comment on the water quality and what you will do to keep our drinking water safe?
This is the most important area of public health. Mayor Carino once told me that owning the water system was that's a crown jewel for the village, but at the same time, it was an enormous responsibility. She hit a home run. The way to solve the problem is by being available and by communicating directly with the public. They need to know that the water is safe. For example, a year or so ago, a gentleman in Endwell was concerned because he had dirty water. The water superintendent went over to his house, told him that the problem was construction on Taft Avenue. He left. A couple days later, someone hit a hydrant on the street vertically to his, and it caused another problem, dirty water for him and his neighbors. But he had an enhancer, which he's entitled to do, which increases the pressure, and that increased the volume of water, of the dirty water coming through his and his neighbor's house. This situation could have been explained away. Instead, it got to become a great concern for the whole community because he was not a happy customer, not a happy camper. But the situation could have been alleviated, in my view, if the mayor had gone with the water superintendent and went to the gentleman's house and explained exactly what was happening with his water. He told me that he was going to get, I saw him, and I went over to the waterworks to give an explanation of the situation, and he told me that he was going to get the water, before that, he told me that he was going to get the water tested by a water company. And I told him you should have had the water tested by the health department, because the health department regularly checks the village water to meet the safety standards, which is one thing that happens with municipal water supplies, but doesn't happen with bottled water. But nonetheless, if the situation had explained directly to him, I think he would have understood it better. But because the water department was left to explain it themselves rather than being confronted with the whole situation by a village official, it didn't necessarily have to be the mayor, but someone needed to talk directly to him so they had the facts. But our water system is old, and we need to plan to remodel that water system. The water quality is fine. the water delivery is where you have to be very careful, because you can't allow the pipes get open. It's subject to streptococci, and that's when you have your bottled water advisories, and where you have your threat to public health. So we need to make sure that the public safety is protected.
Thank you. Do you want the question repeated?
There's been a concern by some residents over the quality of water. Could you comment on the water quality and what you will do to keep our drinking water safe?
We have another area of agreement here, is that the communication between the village and the people who use the water has not been good and delayed. This definitely needs to be worked on. Our communication efforts are not good, and that is one of the first things I would look at as mayor, is to get our messages out, get people more aware of what's going on. And Frank is entirely correct that what should have been a problem that could have been taken care of easily is now becoming a greater problem. However, there are a lot of problems with the water system. There is brown water showing up in different locations, and unfortunately it seems that it's quite often the same locations. We have an engineering firm doing a complete and thorough study of the entire water system, flushing, pipes, pumps, to see what, if anything, is wrong. And as Frank has asserted, the water is safe. It is tested. It is tested every 2 weeks from 6 different locations within the village. It is okay, but it is not okay for everyone. The people who are suffering through this, and it is suffering. On a personal front, I received one of the worst tongue lashings I've ever had from my partner when, not paying any attention to the fact that there was flushing in my neighborhood, I did all the white clothes. We don't have any white clothes anymore. And that comes down to communication between her and I. But we are working hard on the problem, and we're both problems, both communication and on the system. And as Frank says, it's an old system. We need to find the gaps in the service. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is a short one, but a heavy one. What steps are you willing to take to mitigate the flooding in the village?
Well, we actually have 2 programs that are starting to, they're putting reservoirs in because of the hills on the north side. What happens is you get a great flushing of water off the north side into the lower areas. We're putting 2 holding tanks in. They've been approved. There's been grants for them. And the particulars I cannot honestly give to you, and I must be very honest with you, I do not know a lot about flood mitigation. I should know more, but I would like to explain to everyone here is that when you become a trustee, and I'm sure Frank will agree with this, is that you don't get a guidebook. Quite often what you learn is on the run. You try to do your best, you try to do your honest best. The facts and what is going on is not always before you. We have a light company, we have a police department, a fire department, a street department. There are several contracts with unions. There are finances, there are loans, grants, 22 grants, I believe, at this moment. And it is a constant and steep learning curve. That is another thing I'd like to address as mayor, is that we need to help each other in the government. What we need the most is unfortunately, it would have to be volunteer technical work on collecting information on what is available, what isn't available, what we possibly could access. We need technical help in the village. And again, Frank is correct. There's no money there for us to hire a technical crew, but we can look and request help from the schools, particularly the university. And let me get back to the original question. I cannot tell you a lot about flood mitigation, and I would find that out should I become mayor, or actually I'll do some studying in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Would you like the question repeated?
We're dealing with the issue of flood mitigation. First thing I would do is make us there's grants available, the clean energy grant is available, but there's also a situation where we need to advocate for our community. Let me give you a little bit of background. When I was on the board, I constantly went into the village and talked to the human resources person early in the morning, and also the public works guy and any other labor person that was around. But the public works guy was extremely competent. His name was Gene Kutches. I went to him one day in the spring of, I think it was 1995. There was another great flood in the spring, from the melt and the rain. It was like April, March when the floods occurred. And I said to Gene, Gene, I feel sorry for those poor people on Argonne Street. They get flooded continually. Every spring, every flood, they have to evacuate their homes. How come we can't put the flood wall there, move the flood wall there to help them? He said, Frank, you're right to be concerned, but the situation is when the Corps of Engineers designed the flood project, which started at the Whitney Point Dam and came all the way down through the valley, they did an engineering marvel. There were great floods here in 36, 38, 48, and then there weren't any floods until the 2006 flood and the 2011 flood. And if you go back to what Gene told me about, you got to protect the flood, you got to have the water go somewhere. Since Hurricane Agnes in 1972, River Plaza built a flood wall. What happened in the flood of 2011? The water came over the dam there, and the water stayed. It couldn't get back to its natural flow. So it trapped, those houses had to be destroyed after because the water destroyed the houses near the golf course, near the old IBM Country Club. Did a lot of flood damage to the country club itself and other properties. Then you look up the river, and at Lourdes Hospital, they built a flood wall after the 06 flood. What happened? Look across the river. It doesn't take an engineer. Look across the river. MacArthur School was flooded. So now we come back down the river again, back to UE High School. UE High School had so many flood claims that their insurance company was threatening to withdraw or to increase premiums beyond belief. So they built a flood wall. So what happened? You look across the river from the UE High School, and there's Twin Oaks. That area was devastated. Houses had to be destroyed and not rebuilt because FEMA paid the vessel government and the taxpayers for their houses. So what do we have to do? We need to advocate for our municipality through the...
They're saying they need to speak up.
Okay, so we need to advocate for our municipality through the to federal and state government agencies and the elected officials.
Thank you. So people in the back are having a hard time hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. We got to get the microphone closer. Thank you. Okay, we only have a couple more questions. How are you doing? Okay. How do you propose to improve the appearance of the village, and how will you enforce such propositions?
Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to beautify the avenue. I walked up and down the avenue, and the first complaint you hear is that the trees are gone, and the plots of land where the trees were have been concreted over. On the campaign trail, someone made a suggestion to me that we put a tree known as Princeton elms in there. That's one suggestion. I'm not hard and fast in that, but that's just how ideas can be nurtured. But I also visited the merchants, and I'll visit them again, and ask them what they think would enhance the appearance, whether it's trees, shrubs, something that's maintainable with low cost, low impact, can be worked on or adopted by neighbors. One suggestion on Facebook was a good one. It said, put the trees out to bid where people could buy a tree in memory of someone and put a small plaque on the tree. I thought that was a great idea. So that's the first step that we need to do to bring us back. The other thing is, we need to use the resources that we have. The Dick's Tournament is a marvelous event. How many remember when the BC Open had a week-long ceremony, when they had fireworks before the BC Open started at the stadium? Why can't we do that? Why can't we have events downtown before or after the BC Open? Something to keep our people, our businesses in the area. There's a lot of different things we can do. Whatever we do in terms of events, that only enhances our sense of community and makes us stronger. The better we know our neighbors, the better we'll get along with them.
So how do you propose to improve the appearance, and how will you enforce such propositions?
How would I?
Enforce such propositions.
I've mentioned some of the beautification programs I would like to do. It requires community-based activity. I can go into these a little deeper. I have pet names for all these. There's paint and porches. This is designed to help low-income and senior citizens to upgrade their houses through grants and loans. It's a public-private enterprise that would provide the money. And then they could paint, fix their porches. This enhances the curb appeal. Second program I had was the nonprofits and neighborhoods. We need to get the whole community involved. Nonprofits are exactly what they say they are, nonprofits. I feel as though they owe something to their communities. And what they could do to those for this community was to adopt neighborhoods, and in conjunction with the entire administration, they could come in and help clean neighborhoods. They could have things that would help people maybe mow their lawns, shovel their sidewalks. A lot of people are not capable of doing that. These are little things. I also have the program where, more or less put up and shut up with absentee landlords. There's too many of them. They're coming in because our market for these houses are so cheap. They come in, they buy a house, they rent it out, they generate a profit, and then they abandon it. We need to ride these people mercilessly and hopefully ride them right out of town or have them take care of their properties. These are smaller projects. And Washington Ave, we should have, as he mentioned, we need to talk to everyone involved on Washington Ave, what they would like, because if you gather 100 people together, you're going to get 60 different answers. What we need to do is find the most expedient and the wisest decision on beautification of the avenue. And that requires community involvement. Almost everything that would beautify this area requires the community to be proud of it. The days of merchants and people going out sweeping their sidewalks is evidently gone. We need to try to bring that back. so people go out and take some pride in the front of their houses.
Thank you. So that concludes the pre-established questions. We have a couple questions. Some of the questions by the audience were very similar to those that we already asked. So we've only got a couple. For these, we're gonna do like speed dating, 1-minute responses. Okay? And there's only 3, and then we'll conclude with a final question that'll end us on a bit of a positive note. So, 1 minute. How are we going to control property taxes?
Well, the state seems to have a good grip on that because they're considering putting a permanent cap on villages and towns, and that's fine. I would like to point out that this village manager who's overpaid has, along with the trustees and the mayor, managed to hit that cap 12 years in a row. Financially, this village is in great shape compared to most villages. And I think we can maintain the taxes by enlarging the tax base, which requires jobs and more people moving into the area. If you enlarge the base, it spreads out the problem.
Thank you. Do you want the question repeated?
The real principle here is, the real answer is by creating jobs. Jobs is the engine that increases property values, that brings people in, that helps pay the tax bill. We need to use our pilot money for purposes of bringing in real jobs, not promises like for 10 jobs or minimal amount of jobs that move from a few blocks away in the village to within the village line. We need jobs that come from other places. Jobs like were taken away from us today with the I3 program was bought by a company in Wisconsin, and 300 engineering jobs are going to be leaving this area going to Wisconsin. We need to use our pilots to bring people in jobs from Wisconsin, from California, from Texas, from India, from China.
Thank you.
So this is talking about I3, the next question. What is happening with I3? Are there enough businesses left at Huron campus to help pay our property taxes?
First off, the reassessment that the Huron campus got was most generous a few years ago, and it was based on Huron being an employer. Huron is not an employer, it's a leasing company. They should have been taxed accordingly. The real thing is we need to use those pilots, not pilots that are poster boys for bad pilots. The one that was recently rejected that we've talked about already. We need to use the pilots to bring in real jobs from outside the community that add to the community, that add to the tax base, that increase the value of our own real estate.
Thank you. Would you like a question? Yeah, please. What is happening with I3? Are there enough businesses left at Huron campus to help pay our property taxes?
I3, as he stated, is leaving the area, 300 jobs. The jobs in Huron campus don't pay your property taxes. The property that Huron campus sits on pays property taxes. And the deals that were made have pretty much established that. There are lots of jobs in Huron campus. It is, in fact, the largest employer in Endicott by far. There are multiple businesses there, and there are 5 or 6 of them that are actually cutting-edge, high-tech businesses. There are 2 or 3 of them that if they take off and we can keep them here, then our success will be magnified greatly.
Thank you. Is the village of Endicott open for business? What are your plans?
We are definitely open for business. We need to seek out companies and bring them here. Tesla has a program that they will come and build the recharging units for you. You have to pass, of course, qualifications and stuff. We should be reaching out to them. We should be reaching out to, my partner insists that we reach out to Trader Joe's. If I could get a Trader Joe's here, my life would be wonderful, because she's a shopper at Trader Joe's. We need to seek out companies to bring them here. And as Frank says, this is when we access the pilots, when somebody comes in from a bona fide company and offers to bring a company here.
Thank you. Do you want the question repeated?
We're open for business. Absolutely. We need to be open for business in many ways, but it starts with having a leader, a mayor, who has a strong voice, a strong advocate for the community. It starts by dealing with other governments, by getting them to pay more, to contribute more toward our own survival, toward our cooperation. Recently, the village board put in a proposal to have landlords hire a manager at a $75, or a list, I should say, register a manager at a $75 fee. That's a good concept, but it should be done by the county's emergency services division. Because if there's a problem and you need to get a hold of the manager, most municipalities will contact the county agency, the county emergency services, if there's a flood, a fire, an explosion, God forbid. If there's any of those things that goes through the county, the village has a hard time administering to picking up parking ticket fees. Now we need to establish a whole other department.
Thank you. Okay, so this is our last question, and you will be given 3 minutes if you so choose to utilize it. The question is two-part. One is, what are all of the strengths that you see that Endicott has? And what is your vision for the future?
The biggest strength we have is the tradition we have of quality work. We have an infrastructure in place. We are essentially a city without the authorization, because the state hasn't authorized a city since the city of Newburgh in the 1920s. But we need to advocate. We're constantly being put under the pressure, as Larry says, of the 2% cap, and that is a great deal of pressure on our municipality faced in light of inflation and natural increases in salaries. But we need to advocate for the village to our state officials. One of the first things I would do is invite Governor Coppola to come here. We rarely see him. He comes in, he breaks a ribbon, and then he leaves. He puts the 2% cap on us and says sayonara. But we service 45,000 water customers, 45,000 sewer customers. We are a city. The town doesn't provide any of those services. The village does. The city of Hornell has a population of about 9,000 people, and there are other examples. And they're a city, so they're safe, harmless from the 2% cap. They get federal money, while we don't. The city of Binghamton gets federal money. They have 155 firemen, 155 policemen, and so people come there from New York. They get pushed by the great amount of police force in Binghamton to Johnson City. Then they get pushed to Endicott. We need to have some of the same protection and some of the same finances that cities have without the pressure of caps, but keeping that pressure on ourselves to keep taxes low. But at the same time, we need the federal government to be responsive to us the way they are to the city of Binghamton. This financing in the state and federal system is antiquated and needs to be brought up to the modern age. And that would benefit Endicott a lot. So I intend to be that kind of advocate for our village.
Thank you. Would you like the question repeated? What are Endicott's greatest strengths, and what is your vision for the future?
And Endicott's greatest strength is the people in Endicott. We all live here. I think we all believe in Endicott, and I think we all want the best for Endicott. Frank has hit upon an interesting subject that nobody likes to talk about, so I'm going to talk about it. It's called consolidation. Now, everybody thinks when you say that, you're going to do away with the village of Endicott. I beg to differ. As Frank has mentioned, Johnson City and Endicott provide water, in our case, power. We pick up garbage. We have sidewalks. My advocation would be perhaps the town of Union needs to consolidate with the villages instead of the other way around. We provide services, and we, as Frank has mentioned, are hard pressed to provide services. It is interesting that the areas outside of the village where people live comfortably come into the village to work and shop and then step out of the village to enjoy the services paid by the village. It's time we looked into the entire setup of this peculiar arrangement. We, in fact, should be a city.
So you have now, that concludes our questions. So I will give each candidate 3 minutes to utilize their time in closing remarks to you, and then that will be the end of the debate. Oh, you're the...
I started at the beginning.
Thank you.
Before we close, I want to correct a couple things. The first thing is the treasurer position is in the statute, in the New York State statutory law. It's a 2-year appointment in the law. It's not a 1-year appointment, it's a 2-year appointment, and that's in fact in stated law. The second point I want to clear up, and it's an interesting one, the discussion we're having now, that the way the state constitution is set up, they recognize municipality, they recognize cities, counties, and towns. So there really is no structure in place for the village right now in terms of its finances. In other words, if the village went bankrupt, went into default, it would become part of the town. The town, the way the city constitution is written right now, has no obligation to pick up any of the services that the village has. They have no obligation to pick up any of the debt, but they can benefit from all of the tax base that they would add in the village. So it's really important that somewhere down the line, the state legislature takes these issues up and redefines the role of villages like Endicott. We have like a $28 million budget with a 13,000 population. So it's a $28 million budget, 13,000 population. You'd be hard pressed anywhere in New York State and perhaps even in the nation to find examples of municipalities that provide that much service outside of their boundaries. Part of the problem goes back in history because those of us who grew up here remember the village line to the north is Summit Street. The area above the north side was empty lots that Endicott Johnson workers were entitled to for a small fee. So around in the 50s, when the village started to expand, when IBM started going even stronger than EJ's, and EJ's was still going strong, the village extended beyond Summit Street. And what they did, the town went to the village, said, we need water, we need sewer. And the village, out of the goodness of their heart and the prosperity that they enjoyed, said, we'll just provide those services for you. What they should have said is, we'll give you the services, we'll be happy to do that, but you have to become part of the village. They failed to do that because of the prosperity at the time. In retrospect, that was a fundamental planning mistake. But the state really needs to revisit the role of the village, and the village needs a strong advocate for that purpose. And we need a strong advocate in flood mitigation to extend the walls. There's an area in the village, the town of Union, that's one of the...
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
free to say whatever I want.
You are free to say whatever.
I find it interesting that people can disagree so deeply, yet look for the same result. And that's what we need to do in the village, is gather all the people who care deeply and have open and honest discussions. I would have no fear appealing to him for information as mayor. There are other people that I can think of that can help out. We must create that base. We must be proud of ourselves. And in order to do that, we must look to the future. I think that Endicott has a future, and it's in jobs. Here on campus right now is the center of our job situation. We must, despite the good deal they got on taxes, we must support them. We must make them move forward. We must assist them to move forward. They are our engine. Right now, they are our economic engine. Should we seek others? Yes, we should, but we should take care of what we got while we're seeking new things. And in order to do that, in order to do a lot of what we want to do, both Frank, myself, Cheryl, anyone will tell you, we need to have open and frank discussions. Not frank discussions, frank discussions. And I would attempt to do that. I feel as though we need to involve the whole community. There has been a habit of becoming insular, where you seek less from the outside. We need to seek more from outside ourselves. And as Frank said, whoever is mayor needs to reach out to the federal government, the state government, the county government, but most of all, we must reach out to our citizens to find out what we're looking for. I can't go to Broome County and say, I want this, and not know what the village wants. So we need to enlarge the village people's responses and participation. And can we disagree? You bet we can. And that's where you move forward. You disagree, you make mistakes, you have fights, and you move on. That's the way it goes. Thank you.
Now we can clap. Thank you. I would like to thank everyone for coming tonight, for taking time out of your busy lives to be here and to listen to the candidates. I'd like to thank the candidates for your frank responses. And good luck to both of you. Thank you.
We also want to thank the American Legion for hosting us tonight. They invited us all, when this is over, to come to the bar. They have drinks and other refreshments there that we can purchase to kind of show our support for the Legion for hosting us. I also want to recognize we have some candidates in the room. Right here we have Janet Kent. She's our Democratic candidate for Johnson City Village District Justice. Thank you. And back here in the corner, we have Diane Hunter. She's also our Democratic candidate for Village of Endicott Trustee. And we also want to thank Trustee Konechny for coming tonight to support our candidates here. And again, you folks have a decision to make on the 25th, and the goal of the Democratic Women was to give you some needed information to make that decision on the 25th.
Well done.
Thank you for coming, everyone, and have a good evening.